In writing, there are different techniques and grammar styles. So here we're seeing the technique and style of a description of a circumstance and a place and the events that lead up to something. Another technique is to start off a story with an action, like a bank robbery or a death or a murder or whatever it might be, or two people kissing if it's a romance. So there are different ways and techniques for authors to bring about events and then explain them. So here we see back in the beginning of the 10th canto how Sukadeva Goswami was describing the various dynasties of the Manus and mentioned the Yadu dynasty and the advent of Krishna and Balaram. And immediately Maharaj Pariksit asked him to speak more specifically about the advent of Krishna. Then he went into the story of how Bhumi, the presiding deity of Mother Earth, was experiencing so much difficulty due to the massive development of military strength and fighting on Earth. And she went to Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma and the different demigods went to the ocean of milk, prayed to the Lord. He instructed them to advent on Earth and different avatars in the Yadu and Vrishni dynasties to assist him in his pastimes, and that he would personally appear. Then we read about how Kamsa and Vasudeva and Devaki had their different pastimes, and the prediction that the 8th child of Devaki would kill Kamsa, and then the pastime and the discussion between Vasudeva and Kamsa. So now we're actually coming to the place in the pastime and in the story where the Supreme Personality of Godhead makes his first appearance. So let us go here. And this is a combination of the last lesson in October and the first lesson in November. And Samapriya, I'm going to read this first one. First slide is 10th canto, 2nd chapter, texts 16 and 17. Thus, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the supersoul of all living entities, and who vanquishes all the fear of his devotees, entered the mind of Vasudeva in full opulence. While carrying the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within the core of his heart, Vasudeva bore the Lord's transcendently illuminating effulgence, and thus he became as bright as the sun. He was therefore difficult to see, very difficult to see, or approach through sensory perception. Indeed, he was unapproachable and unperceivable, even for such formidable men as Kamsa, and not only for Kamsa, but for all living entities. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Although unborn, the Lord, the master of everything, appears like a born child by entering into the mind of a devotee. The Lord is already there within the mind, and consequently it is not astonishing for him to appear as if born from the devotee's body. The word avivesha signifies that the Lord appeared within the mind of Vasudeva. There was no need for a discharge of semen. That is the opinion of Sripad Sridhar Swami and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Dham refers to the place where the Supreme Personality of Godhead resides. Any place where the Supreme Personality of Godhead is present by his name, form, qualities, or paraphernalia immediately becomes a Dham. For example, we speak of Vrindavan Dham, Dwarka Dham, and Mathura Dham, because in these places, the name, fame, qualities, and paraphernalia of the Supreme Godhead are always present. Similarly, if one is empowered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to do something, the core of his heart becomes a Dham, and thus he becomes so extraordinarily powerful that not only his enemies, but also people in general are astonished to observe his activities. I'm interested to know, raise your hand or just like this. Has anybody been to Krishna Janmabhoomi, where Krishna appeared? Has any, I guess not anybody, not one person has, no, never gone to Janmabhoomi. Oh, Sri Vrindavan has. Haribol. Did you go to the place where Kamsa's prison was? There's also a cave there where Sanatana Goswami used to live when he was in Mathura. All right. So, Sami, you want to continue, and we'll go on here. They're in the prison house, but nonetheless, Krishna is not restricted by Kamsa's prison. He can enter anywhere, and thus within the prison. Now the Supreme Lord has entered Vasudev's body, and as was just described, he became so effulgent and bright that it was even difficult to look at him and see him. So next person, Sama.
Okay. Hare Krishna, everyone. Happy Kartik.
Yes, happy Kartik to everyone.
I just wanted to mention one wonderful thing from the purport, how the heart is the Dham. Antarakash is called Antarakash. The Lord of the inside the Dham is in your heart. So we want that. We want even in the prison there was the Dham. The Dham you can always be in the Dham by keeping Krishna in your heart, by chanting and following the other principles of devotional service. So let's all become Dhams. That would be far out, huh? All Dhams. Okay,
actually, that's actually reminding me of the one time Lord Chaitanya was cleaning the Gundicha temple, and as he cleaned the dust, he kept cleaning finer and finer particles of it, and finally he explained that the heart is the place where the Supreme Personality of Godhead sits. So one should cleanse his heart and invite the Supreme Lord to sit there.
Right. Okay. Sham Govinda, are you there? Would you like to read?
Yes, thanks, Mother Samapriya. Hare Krishna, dear devotees.
Oh.
Srimad Bhagavatam 10, chapter 2, text 18. Thereafter, accompanied by plenary expansions, the fully opulent Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is all auspicious for the entire universe, was transferred from the mind of Vasudeva to the mind of Devaki. Devaki, having thus been initiated by Vasudeva, became beautiful by carrying Lord Krishna, the original consciousness for everyone, the cause of all causes, within the core of her heart, just as the east becomes beautiful by carrying the rising moon. Purport. As indicated here by the word manasta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was transferred from the core of Vasudeva's mind or heart to the core of the heart of Devaki. We should note carefully that the Lord was transferred to Devaki not by the ordinary way for a human being, but by Diksha initiation. Thus, the importance of initiation is mentioned here. Unless one is initiated by the right person, who always carries within his heart the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot acquire the power to carry the Supreme Godhead within the core of one's own heart.
Hare Krishna. This is a lot about the core of the heart. Do you have something to say about this, Sham? Any realization?
I think it just, I guess it kind of, the whole theme is purity. Vasudeva is practicing Krishna consciousness on a very pure level, and knowledge is passed through that, and even the human way is that there's a discharge of semen and the soul is transferred in that way, but this method is so pure that the Lord himself can just go across by a means that we can't comprehend from our material situation. So what's really coming to me is just this is a very high science, and it's all powered by love because it's a transfer of something which we can't explain through the heart.
Yeah. Okay, that brings a real interesting topic about diksha and about how the spiritual master actually gives the disciple Krishna, or he opens the door. Now we have to walk through. That's what happens. We have to walk through. And this thing that you mentioned about purity, that's the key. So what is the purest state of consciousness of the soul? Simple. We are the what of Krishna?
No, the servant.
Yeah. So if we understand that, then we're on our path back to Godhead. Thank you, Sean. Okay, we'll go on now.
One thing, Sam.
Sorry.
It's nice that you brought up that Antarkash. We haven't talked about that in a long time.
Okay.
The soul, the particle of consciousness as a spiritual entity, actually has, just like when we conceive of something, we generally connect with it through our mind and intelligence, which is like filter for consciousness, but pure consciousness itself can also meditate and have the Lord's pastimes directly transmitted into one's consciousness, because that is a spiritual energy, a spiritual place. We just read about Dham. So somehow or other, as Sham was expressing, it's practically inconceivable to us. But the Vedic culture, the Vedic civilization, and the Vedic method of initiation, of diksha, of the parampara, is a very esoteric, subtle way in which a person who's a liberated soul, who has captured the Supreme Personality of Godhead within his or her heart, can somehow transfer that possibility and awaken something within a soul. It says that without that, it won't happen. That's what the purport said, that one without this happening. The importance of initiation is mentioned here. Unless one is initiated by the right person, who always carries within his heart the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot acquire the power to carry the Supreme Godhead within the core of one's heart. So the unspoken message here is that without receiving initiation, one cannot really attain the Siddha Swarup of understanding one's eternal true identity. We might understand who is Krishna and who are we, with understanding we're his eternal servants naturally, but to actually understand the bond and relationship of who we are eternally requires this particular step. Yes, Sri Vrindavan?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. I was just, two things struck me also in this purport. One was that Prabhupada says in the purport that this transfer of from the mind of Vasudeva to the mind of Devaki was exactly as the setting sun's rays are transferred to the full moon rising in the east. I never thought about it like that the sun's rays are actually transferred, and that's why the moon becomes illuminated, because the sun's rays are being transferred. So that was kind of, it struck me. But the last line of this purport, which is a comment by Sri Veera Raghava Acharya, is that the Supreme Lord's entrance into the womb of Devaki from the heart of Vasudeva was a heart-to-heart relationship. Really like that, heart-to-heart relationship. It's very sweet.
And that means it has nothing to do with the body. Nothing to do with the body, because when in the spiritual sense, when we refer to the heart, it's not necessarily a muscle. It's keeping the body together. It's the consciousness within the living entity. Thank you. One more important factor about this particular verse and purport is this hearing from the right person, from the pure devotee, from the pure, and again, Prabhupada always used to say submissive oral reception. And then become very vulnerable. If we have submissive oral reception, then we're hearing what that person said. We're becoming like it. So that's why we have to be a little careful who we take seriously. And of course, the spiritual master representing Srila Prabhupada and Krishna and the disciplic succession. That's a safe bet right there to take seriously. Thank you, Sri Vrindavan. Let's go on now with Tisha. Tisha, like to read?
Good morning, Hare Krishna. Yes. 19 to 20. Devaki then kept within herself the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the foundation of the entire cosmos. But because she was under arrest in the house of Kamsa, she was like the flames of a fire covered by the walls of a pot, or like a person who has knowledge but cannot distribute it to the world for the benefit of human society. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead was within her womb, Devaki illuminated the entire atmosphere in the place where she was confined. Seeing her jubilant, pure, and smiling, Kamsa thought the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, who is now within her, will kill me. Devaki has never looked so brilliant and jubilant. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Knowledge is meant for distribution. Although there is already much scientific knowledge, whenever scientists or philosophers awaken to a particular type of knowledge, they try to distribute it throughout the world, for otherwise the knowledge gradually dries up and no one benefits from it. India has the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, but unfortunately, for some reason or other, this sublime knowledge of the science of God was not distributed throughout the world, although it is meant for all of human society. Human life is meant for God realization, but unfortunately, the materialistic civilization is stressing only the senses of the body, not understanding the living force within the body. Therefore, Krishna has taken birth or taken shelter within the womb of the Krishna consciousness movement. Men of Kamsa's class, therefore, are very much afraid and are busy trying to stop this movement, especially in the Western countries.
You have to unmute, Sama.
Just before I ask Tisha to give us her realizations, Manvantara, did you have something to say about this or have a question? There you go.
I can wait until Tisha responds to her thing. I can wait.
Okay. Tisha, what do you think about this?
I just think that it was a beautiful verse describing how Devaki appeared once Krishna entered her heart, and the effulgence was transferred. And then Prabhupada just explains that if knowledge isn't shared, it dries up. And so the knowledge of Krishna consciousness wasn't being shared properly. And so now Prabhupada was sharing it with the Krishna consciousness movement, and still there are people trying to dissuade or, attack or something the movement.
Good. We see that when when someone's Krishna conscious, he immediately gets a lot of enemies because Maya is strong. Maya is really strong. She likes to fight back. Thank you for that. Good. Manvantara, did you want to say something? And everyone else can also think about this person, mention something, because especially Sri Vrindavan, who was a preacher herself. And this is a verse that talks to you, my dear. Hare Krishna.
Well, just complimenting what Tisha said a little bit. It talks about, earlier in the chapter we read about Devaki representing in text 8, Bhakti Yoga, and how Krishna is conceived and Balaram being the spiritual master and that. And then now this initiation heart-to-heart relationship that Vasudeva is having with Devaki, and then the mention of Srila Prabhupada. And so, like in the year, for example, in the year 2320, when reading this, how would a person in that year know that Prabhupada is the guru or initiating guru or a guru like that or someone else or how to recognize a guru like for
Okay.
Diksha initiation, you know what I mean? Something like that. Because like the guru is not going to say, I'm the guru. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't know if that makes any sense right there.
Yeah, no, you explained it pretty good. How can anyone answer this question? How can you tell that Srila Prabhupada has Krishna in his heart and is able to do this, to spread this, and that how is it so that Krishna has incarnated in the womb of this Hare Krishna movement? How can one tell that? That's a nice meditation. Anyone?
Can I say something?
Yes.
I just want to say that, we are reading the Lilamrita currently, and Prabhupada is he's just gone to San Francisco. And there are 50, 60 people who have come to receive him. And all they know is they've heard from Mukunda Maharaj about Srila Prabhupada. And they've heard the holy name which Mukunda Maharaj has carried with him to the West Coast. On the strength of that, there are all these people who have come to receive Srila Prabhupada with so much anticipation and with so much eagerness because of that purity. And they can tell from the different interviews which were held that they can tell that this person is carrying Krishna within his heart and he's so pure that he's giving out with no expectation of anything in return. All he wants us to be pure and no meat eating. No, he just insists, no drugs, no this, no that. And so the purity was there because these people who were so fallen, in the sense materially so fallen, but they could understand and see the purity of Prabhupada's heart and his mission. So to me, that's a very, very clear indication that yes, you can tell that Prabhupada what was carrying was, despite the haziness in our vision, we could still see that this is very pure.
Anyone else have something to Jai Shri? Thank you, Shri Vrinda.
Well, and like she was talking about the Lilamrita and all these books and all these diaries that people who served him personally, and all the devotees, just by his actions and activities and everything was always surrounded. It was just always centered on Krishna. It was never anything mundane, and everything he saw everything that we can use in service of Krishna. It was not like nothing was like mundane what we were.
Oh, that's a good point. You didn't see anything mundane.
Yeah. Everything, like people would say, why are you riding in a whatever Rolls Royce? If you're using it for Krishna, it's purified. So he saw that, and he knew that, and he just by seeing him, like she was saying, people would see him and they knew.
Yeah.
What about us who never got to see him?
Okay, good that you brought that up. And to you in a minute, Shyam, good that you brought that up. Because most people in the Hare Krishna movement have not seen Srila Prabhupada. And what is more important than seeing?
Hearing.
And what has Srila Prabhupada done to give the world Krishna, to keep Krishna in the womb of the Hare Krishna movement? What has he done?
The
main thing.
So many books. Translated all his books. We also have all his classes.
Yeah. Speaking, hearing, but his books were his mission. That is what the Krishna has taken the shelter of his books, right? Because most people now, there are only a few people in the beginning, 5,000 people tops, who, even his own disciples, some disciples never even saw Srila Prabhupada. So even though it's true that when you see and you're in the presence of a pure devotee, you become affected, more important, and Srila Prabhupada has taught us this, than seeing is hearing. That's the way to attain knowledge. That's the way to
That's it.
recognize when you hear some. You can see two people, and one person looks like he's a self-realized soul, and then when he starts to speak, you say, "This is what is
True.
that?" And other persons might look like a businessman. I used to like to go up to the businessman in LAX and give him a chance, give him a book, and sometimes you'd be really surprised. These people are looking for the absolute truth. So
Mhm.
you can't tell by the way a person is necessarily dressed or presenting himself. Krishna, who is cultivating this, and who will benefit from hearing from Srila Prabhupada. This is the whole. That's why we have these classes. That's why
Yeah.
That's what satsanga is: hearing, discussing about the pastimes of Krishna. And what did we read last night? Was not last night. Last week, the ultimate benediction for everyone. What was that, Prati? What is that? What is that phrase?
The universal
Satyam
remedy.
Param.
Universal remedy.
Universal remedy. Okay, let's go on. That's a signal.
Oh, wait, I just had one more thing.
Oh, yes.
I was just gonna say, if someone is declaring that he is Krishna, he is God's representative, like, he's the pure devotee and all of that, that actually I think is a negative, like, yeah.
A disqualification.
Yeah, that's his disqualification, exactly. I just want
Good. What's the quality? What's the quality that he's obviously going against?
humility.
Humility. Good. Just real quick, Prabhupada said in the Bhagavad Gita, the definition of humility is one who is not interested in having the praise of others. He has given up the desire to get glorified and praised from others. So that motivation is, you're right, Jayashree, a disqualification. Okay, let's hear from Premananda. Premanandaji, would you like to read?
Sorry, okay. Srimad Bhagavatam 10 to 21 and 22. Kamsa thought, what is my duty now? The Supreme Lord, who knows his purpose, will not give up his prowess. Devaki is a woman. She is my sister, and moreover, she is now pregnant. If I kill her, my reputation, opulence, and duration of life will certainly be vanquished. A person who is very cruel is regarded as dead even while living. For while he is living or after his death, everyone condemns him. And after the death of a person in the bodily concept of life, he is undoubtedly transferred to the hell known as Andattama. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A Kshatriya becomes famous by performing heroic acts. But what would be heroic about killing a woman who, while confined in his custody, was under his shelter? Therefore, he did not want to act drastically by killing Devaki. Kamsa's enemy was within Devaki's womb, but killing an enemy in such a nascent state would not be an exhibition of prowess. Kamsa considered that if he killed his sister while living, he would be condemned by everyone. And after death, he would go to the darkest region of hellish life because of his cruelty. Kamsa, having good sense about the science of the soul's transmigration, deliberately refrained from killing Devaki.
You have to unmute, Sama.
I have one question, Premanandaji. How
Yeah.
come if Kamsa is being displayed as being such a familiar with the Vedic scriptures, familiar with what is karma, all of these things, and we'll hear him preach in a little while also, how is he? And he even recognizes that Devaki is so beautiful. That means the Supreme Personality of Godhead must be in her womb. He is knowing all these things, and yet he still does not become a devotee. I'm bewildered. Answer that.
One is he has bad association. He has all demoniac friends around him, and they kind of poison his ears, and that's why he cannot make the right judgment.
Ah.
And all of us have a good dog and a bad dog within us, right? So it's a question of who do you listen to, the good dog or a bad dog? I think his mode of passion and ignorance sometimes takes over his mode of goodness, and he's not able to make that right discrimination as to what is the right thing to do. So
what
that's
about the association? Talk more
Yeah.
about the association, how important
Right.
that is.
Right.
Speak.
Oh, I'm saying, yeah, association is very important because Kamsa has all his demoniac friends who are very hungry for power and control. So that's why, I mean, if we associate too much with, let's say, in my own experience, if we associate too much with, let's say, materialistic people, you get a sense of fear about everything. Oh, this is going to happen. I don't have enough bank balance. What will happen to my kid? There's always fear, because you don't have the right association. You're not hearing the right things. But when you are associating with the scriptures, with devotees, with saintly persons, then you get a true vision of everything. So fear does not engulf you. So that's what I can think of. If you associate with somebody who are always afraid, naturally also becomes afraid of his own death, even though he knows that a soul never dies. So it's bewildering. Kamsa's behavior is bewildering.
Of course, we can just chalk it up to Leela, but there's a lot of philosophy in this too.
Or blame it on Narada.
Narada, the instigator, transcendental instigator.
Yeah.
I think
There's another point of view on this topic as well, that there are in this material world basically two types of people in human bodies, suras and asuras. And it's described earlier, we read last week or the week before, that in his previous life he was Kalanemi. And when Narada told him that, his anger, just like Hiranyakasipu, became more and more inflamed. Whereas a person who's asuram bhava, it's an actual nature that a person has become so conditioned in this material world, even if they associate with saintly people. He has the association of Narada Muni, but that association only inflamed his hate and his anger toward the Lord. So it's not simply association. Of course, over time, that will ultimately have its benefit, because we know Kamsa attained liberation and then he comes back in another form, and ultimately he'll attain his spiritual position. But sometimes association is not enough. They've done nice studies, especially with crowd control, where a person, if you meet him or her individually, and you ask him, would you ever become violent, or would you ever throw anything, or would you ever do something like this? And individually, they would say, no, I'd never do that. But when they're in an environment, just like the people in January 6th, perhaps at the thing at the White House or in Washington, D.C., people maybe did things that they normally wouldn't even do in life, or sporting events. All of a sudden there's riots and people act differently than they normally would, or Palestine and war. There's people that do things they would never do, but there's so much energy pushing them in that direction that they become influenced by it. So it's extremely important, both sides of it, to understand a person's nature. There are demons, and we're advised to stay away from them.
Definitely.
If you ever meet one.
I might have met a few in my life. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Okay, let's go on with Manvantara. Manvantaraji, would you like to read?
Text 23 and 24. Sukadev Goswami said, deliberating in this way, Kamsa, although determined to continue in enmity toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead, refrained from the vicious killing of his sister. He decided to wait until the Lord was born and then do what was needed. While sitting on his throne, or in his sitting room, while lying on his bed, or indeed while situated anywhere, and while eating, sleeping, or walking, Kamsa saw only his enemy, the Supreme Lord, Hrishikesha. In other words, by thinking of his all-pervading enemy, Kamsa became unfavorably Krishna conscious. Purport. Kamsa was also Krishna conscious, but because he regarded Krishna as his enemy, he regarded Krishna as his enemy, Even though he was fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, his Krishna consciousness was not favorable for his existence. Krishna consciousness, favorably cultivated, makes one completely happy, so much so that a Krishna conscious person does not consider Kaivalya Sukham, or merging into the existence of Krishna, to be a great gain. Although Kamsa was always absorbed in thoughts of Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he was not happy. A devotee, however, whether sitting on a throne or beneath a tree, is always happy. Srila Rupa Goswami resigned from his office as a government minister to sit beneath a tree, yet he was happy. He did not care for his comfortable position as minister. He was happy even beneath a tree in Vrindavan, favorably serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee.
Wow. So what's that difference mean? What is that difference?
Favorably accepting, meditating on Krishna versus seeing Krishna as the enemy.
You know, it's said sometimes that even that emotion of seeing Krishna as the enemy could be even more intense than having a favorable view. You know, they're deeply more intense, but unfavorable. That's an interesting point. What else you got?
Well, I mean, doesn't I remember reading from the Brahma Samhita where it talked about certain things, certain behaviors that are favorable for cultivating a relationship in love, like fear is not necessarily the best favorable way to cultivate a relationship with Krishna in love, but it's there as an emotion, you know. But so not all emotions, you know, like envy obviously is not something to cultivate to someone in love, but so favorably do something pleasant that you would reciprocate with in love is what's favorable.
Yeah, something that eases the heart. You can feel in your heart, hate and love. It's a big difference. Patti, do you have something to say about
Yeah, this is a nice opportunity to again emphasize that some devotees take the time, do the research, and write about some of the topics in the lesson meditation. And this was an excellent one. There were some very good forum posts on this topic. So I would encourage everyone to go through your emails and look at these, because in our review here that we spend kind of going quickly through the different topics, we can't expand on everything, but we pick those particular topics. And this is a famous one, that Kamsa's Krishna conscious, unfavorable Krishna conscious, is a big topic. Rupa Goswami, the different Goswamis have and acharyas have commented on it extensively. So thank you for those that wrote those forum topics. Can't go into them now, obviously. So take the time to go into them and take a look as we go on now to the next topics.
Wonderful. Thank you. It's always very inspiring, these kinds of discussions. Sri Vrindavan, would you like to continue?
Yes, thank you. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:2, 25 and 26. Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, accompanied by great sages like Narada, Devala, and Vyas, and by other demigods like Indra, Chandra, and Varuna, invisibly approached the room of Devaki, where they all joined in offering their respectful obeisances and prayers to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can bestow blessings on everyone. The demigods prayed, "O Lord, you never deviate from your vow, which is always perfect, because whatever you decide is perfectly correct and cannot be stopped by anyone. Being present in the three phases of cosmic manifestation, creation, maintenance, and annihilation, you are the supreme truth. Indeed, unless one is completely truthful, one cannot achieve your favor, which therefore cannot be achieved by hypocrites. You are the active principle, the real truth in all the ingredients of creation, and therefore you're known as Antaryami, the inner force. You're equal to everyone, and your instructions apply for everyone for all time. You are the beginning of all truth. Therefore, offering our obeisances, we surrender unto you. Kindly give us protection.
Okay, so this slide and the next two ones, the next two slides are pretty. It's the same verses, and the next one's the purports. So I want you to meditate on this and listen carefully for the next slides. And Chaitamai and Jayashree will read the next slides, and then we'll have a whole group discussion about them. Okay? So let's go on with Jayashree. Would you like to continue?
Sure. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, accompanied by great sages like Narada and followed by many other demigods, had now invisibly appeared in the house of Kamsa. They began to pray for the Supreme Personality of Godhead in select prayers, which are very pleasing to the devotees and which award fulfillment of devotional desires. The first words they spoke acclaimed that the Lord is true to his vow. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna descends upon this material world just to protect the pious and destroy the impious. That is his vow. The demigods could understand that the Lord had taken his residence within the womb of Devaki to fulfill this vow. They were very glad that the Lord was appearing to fulfill his mission, and they addressed him as Satyam Param, or the Supreme Absolute Truth. You want me to read the whole thing, this page?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Yeah, the whole page.
Okay. One who becomes fully Krishna conscious can attain the absolute truth. Krishna is the absolute truth. Relative truth is not truth in all the three phases of eternal time. Time is divided into past, present, and future. Krishna is truth, always past, present, and future. In the material world, everything is being controlled by the supreme time in the course of past, present, and future. But before the creation, Krishna was existing, and when there is creation, everything is resting in Krishna. And when this creation is finished, Krishna will remain. Therefore, he is absolute truth in all circumstances.
Okay, going on again. And let's just switch real quick to Chaitamai. Now, everybody's concentrating on these, right? Because we're going to have a discussion after.
Hare Krishna, good morning, everyone. If there is any truth within this material world, it emanates from the supreme truth, Krishna. If there is any opulence within this material world, the cause of the opulence is Krishna. If there is any reputation within this material world, the cause of the reputation is Krishna. If there is any strength within this material world, the cause of such strength is Krishna. If there is any wisdom and education within this material world, the cause of such wisdom and education is Krishna. Therefore, Krishna is the source of all relative truths. Devotees, therefore, following in the footsteps of Lord Brahma, pray, Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami, worshiping the Adipurusha, the supreme truth, Govinda. For those who worship me with devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, I carry to them what they lack and preserve what they have. The devotees have no anxiety over what will happen next, where they will stay, or what they will eat, for everything is maintained and supplied by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has promised. Konteya prati janihi name bhakta pranashati. O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotee never perishes. Bhagavad Gita 9:31. from all angles of vision. Therefore, in all circumstances, if one fully surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no question of one struggling for existence.
Okay, one more slide. Let's see if we can all comprehend all of this. One more slide. Go back to Sri Vrindavan. Sri Vrindavan, would you read this?
Explaining the words Satyasya Nyonim, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Krishna is the avatari, the origin of all incarnations. All incarnations are the absolute truth, yet the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the origin of all incarnations. Diparchireva hidasantaramabhyupetya dipayate, Paramasamhita 546. There may be many lamps, all equal in power, but there is a first lamp, a second lamp, a third lamp, and so on. Similarly, there are many incarnations who are compared to lamps, but the first lamp, the original personality of Godhead, is Krishna. Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Okay, well, that was a very, very deep and complete purport. Now, first starting with the devotees who read it first, would you like to comment on something of this?
What I'm going to do is go back to the verse itself so we can kind of see how those purport, those pages fulfilled what was in it.
Okay. Should we read it again, Patti, or not?
I think that maybe go a little bit, just like the first part is about the three phases of time. And then the next part was, you know, the purports, the purport systematically went through the concepts in the prayer. So each one of those slides touched on part of it, and each person can maybe speak about what they read about.
Okay. So, Sri Vrindavan, you hold off for a second, unless you have something to say about this, because this is the verse, and then you read the last part. So let's just open an open discussion with the three of you leading it. Okay. So, Jayashree and Chaitanya.
And Jayashree read about the three phases of time.
Okay, Jayashree.
Well, what I would say was, for me, about Krishna being the avatari, the origin of Krishna is this. So
okay, so why don't we start with that? Why don't we just hold off and you say conclude with that one? What we're trying to do in this order. Jayashree, why don't you comment about this next section? Perhaps you want to put on the next slide? Or there you go. There's the first part. Jayashree, why don't you read that?
O Lord, you never deviate from your vow, which is always perfect, because whatever you decide is perfectly correct and cannot be stopped by anyone. Being present in the three phases of cosmic manifestation, creation, maintenance, and annihilation, you are the supreme truth.
Okay, so now on the next slide. What do you think about this? What stands out to you as the essence of this?
Claim the Lord you descend. So what stands out? That, you know, Krishna followed his vow. He came to destroy the kill, how does the verse go? Kill the miscreants and the destroy that and
protect the devotees.
Protect the devotees and destroy the miscreants. Yeah, and then so that's his vow, and the demigods are praying to him to come. You are gonna, you know, they were glad that he is, well, they were praying. Now he's in Devaki's womb. So, and did you ask me something about truth or time?
Yeah, well,
truth. Okay, so I know in the purport, I was looking at the full purport too. Srila Prabhupada says, everyone is always searching after the truth, but Krishna is the absolute truth. Nothing is truth unless it's Krishna, because everything is, what is it called?
Relative.
It's temporary. It's relative. So So, it may be truth right now, but, in 10 years, it won't be truth, or tomorrow, or 5 minutes. But Krishna is past, present, future, everything. Krishna is always not going to change.
Right.
Yeah.
What,
So,
what does this do to your faith, this particular thing? For me, it was a real faith
oh,
builder.
yeah. I
Such
mean,
a faith builder.
yeah, that part about relative truth is not truth in all the 3 phases of eternal time. So unless you don't believe there's eternality and whatever, it's the only thing that makes sense to me. It's always made sense to me that, everything's eternal. So why was it a head turner? Like, just for you?
Put it back. Put it back to
Go backwards.
just that section. I just grabbed that it was, it when you have the faith in Krishna here, in the material world, everything is being controlled by the supreme time. And but Krishna has always been there. Where are you going to put your faith? Are you going to put your faith in something that's temporary, that's controlled by time? Because what if something's controlled by time? What does that mean about that thing? What does it mean?
It's going to expire.
It's going to expire.
It's going to run out. Yeah, it's going to run out. I know.
And you don't want to put your faith in something like that. That would be foolish, right?
Even you see people like, trying so hard to enjoy because they feel like their time is limited, and it is, but they're going in the wrong way. It's not going to help. So, well, I've only got so much time. I have to do this.
Yeah, hurry up. Yeah, it's really, so that's why it was a faith builder. So where to put your energy, where to put your time, what to take seriously, and what to actually shake off, get away from the material energy. Okay. So that was one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's it. In discussing this concept of relative truth in the material.
Okay.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is not so good. So
Okay. No,
but in discussing relative truth in the material world, it always has to relate to something. You can always deduce it back to something that is not eternal, that is temporary. But Krishna cannot be deduced, and so these arguments of material science, it's always related to something. The truth is always related to something, but Krishna stands alone.
When you say, Kate, that it's related to something, can you give an example?
Yeah.
Maybe someone else can go.
Well, what do you mean it's related to something? That would indicate that Krishna's not related to anything. That's a little confusing. You have to a little bit define it. Oh, we got Sham Govinda. You want him to help you?
Yes, please.
Okay. Sham?
Miss Kate, or almost got it. Well, I think it's because it's dependent on another thing, is what she's trying to say. Whereas Krishna is not dependent on anyone, and that's the whole theme. He's the supreme. He's the supreme of these verses.
What is an example of how we say it's what did you say? It's dependent on something else. Like, for example.
Well, I'm a father, but I have to have a son to be a father.
That's true.
How can Krishna be a father without any children? You're saying it doesn't. I'm not connecting how that is.
Use a different example.
Well, because Krishna is complete, he doesn't need something to depend on.
Right.
And for example, like the Big Bang Theory, it's dependent on something that happened, right? There was a Big Bang, but who made the Big Bang? So
you can never find that origin.
Yeah.
Like who made whatever it was that exploded? Who made that?
We had a couple of hands. Ian, and then Jayashree. Ian?
Yeah, Hare Krishna. I was just thinking that when we talk about relative truth, there's always a chance of somebody adding something to it. In other words, there is I don't know if there's a little kind of little play that there's somebody who sends a message, that somebody sends a message around, a number of persons. So I write a message and pass it along to a number of persons. And along the way, somebody does something to the message. So when it gets back to the person originally, realize, you know, they were saying, yeah. So the truth, relative truth, is like it will be depend, like you said, depend time, place, and circumstance. It can be manipulated.
Right.
I don't know
That's
if you
good.
get the difference. So I'm saying that there's some truth, but I'm saying that it can be manipulated.
Good. Right.
That basically my
It can be manipulated. Very good. Relative truth, it doesn't stand by itself.
No,
it's always dependent upon something else. Dependent.
Yes.
Jayashree? Thank you, Ian.
Yeah, it's like the science, you know, Prabhupada says, where they think they can create something, but they can't create anything without using what Krishna has already provided in nature, or, you know, they can't just make something from nothing. They can't do that. So that's what I was thinking as far as, yeah.
Okay.
Tisha also has her hand raised, huh?
Tisha, did you have your hand raised? Oh, there it is. Okay.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, I was going to say what Jayashree was saying. Like, now a man has lived for 6 months, I think, with a genetically modified heart of a pig, but the life wasn't created. You know, I mean, they took the pig, like there was no life, can't be created. You can't create another person, or you can't create you can't create a heart without the spark of the life. So they find
the heart, it's like a machine, right? They replaced a part of the machine.
They call that progress, but they still haven't created anything. They haven't generated life from nothing. They have to have the spark of Krishna, this, you know, the Supreme Person.
The soul. You cannot, right, exactly. You can't create life. Jayashree? Thank you, Tisha.
Yeah, and also all related to that is their whole purpose is to stop death. They can't do that. Everything is
good luck on that one.
Back to our concepts of relative truth and absolute truth. One of the difficulties for understanding it in the material world is there's no such thing as absolute truth here. Everything is relative. The entire existence, time, space, our relationships, everything we see and interact with are relative truths. And therefore, to understand the absolute truth, one has to become at least opened to another dimension and accept that that exists, and then try to pursue that, a better understanding of that through something beyond the relative experiences that we have, which are the senses. For example, one of the best that everybody who chants Hare Krishna can understand is that if I chant, what does that Prabhupada give? Water, water, water. If I chant the name water, the substance that exists as an element and the name are not the same thing. They're not absolute. They're relative. They're relative to one another. The water represents the name water, the word water, the sound vibration water represents an element, but it is relative to it. It is not it. By chanting water, 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 I don't quench my thirst. Krishna, on the other hand, is absolute. So his name and his personality and his paraphernalia and his form, it's beyond sensual perception, because everything sensual is relative. Whereas we all experience, or we wouldn't be doing it, there's something there that connects on the absolute plane when you chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Otherwise, Srila Prabhupada gives the example, how could you do it over and over and over again for hours? We've all listened to our favorite song, and you can hear it, and oh, it's so nice to hear. But at some point, no matter how many times, the more you listen to it, it's like, okay, you know, this is enough of that. Or reading a book or hearing a story. It's relative. So this is my appreciation little thing on relative truth and absolute truth.
One more, Mama Tara, did you have your hand raised? Did you want to say something?
Sorry about that delay. Right. So I was just going to comment that all the examples were really sufficient in defining what Dhruva Maharaj just said, because Krishna is the seed-given father. So that example also works. I mean, you know, he's the provider of everything. Everything is based on him. But that word absolute is the concluding part of Krishna being truth. He has an absolute nature, like that was just explained.
Nice. And in the purport, it was the part we were just reading that Jai Shri read was the time, past, present, and future, which affect everything in our existence here, doesn't affect Krishna.
Wait a minute. Didn't you read this also? Did you want to comment on this?
I did. It seems like everybody's covered all the bases. Really
I'm so glad everyone's so enthusiastic. That's so cool. But did you want to say something real quick about this?
I was looking at the rest of the purport, and I'm not sure how much of it was actually presented here on the screen. There's a section that explains that those who are engaged in the service of the Lord are not meant to struggle for existence.
I agree.
That's a whole big discussion. And I'm thinking that the only reason they do not struggle for existence is because as fully surrendered souls, we just let Krishna take care of things, and our whole existence is simply to please him and do whatever it takes to make him happy. And therefore there's no self-concern there, or I should say less self-concern, because we know that by taking on Krishna's service, we are in the topmost association, and we have nothing to fear. I'm also thinking of that verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Attaeva Shanta Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Shakali Ashanta, which means that those who are not engaged in Krishna's service, they're always anxious because they've got desires, more and more and more stuff. No matter how much we get, there's always more that we want. And not just material things, but things like liberation. However, a devotee of Krishna doesn't feel anxiety for that, because they're just happy to be with Krishna as his servant. That's peace. That's peace of mind.
That's good. And that's based on everything you said. Go on. What's that based on? One word.
Surrender.
How can you act like that? How can you, oh, Krishna will take care of you. How do you really, really know that? What do you really, really have to cultivate to believe that Krishna will take care of you?
Faith.
Yeah. And that has to be based on knowledge.
Okay.
To satisfy the soul. Satisfaction. So
beautiful.
Very wonderful discussion.
Is Sri Vrindavan's hand still raised?
No, I'm sorry, sweetie.
It's okay. I just wanted to just point out that this verse 10 to 26 is so beautiful and so poetic that I think we can make it as a memorizing verse. Because there are like 9 satya in this verse. In fact, the translation has less word truth than the verse itself, and it is so amazing. And the synonyms Prabhupada is telling us the satyam, satyavratam, satyaparam, trisatyam, satyasya yonim, cha satye, satyasa satyam, rita satyam, satyamakam. So it's so poetic, and it can really download in our consciousness. Krishna is the truth, the whole truth.
It is the
nothing
truth.
but the truth. Yes. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Krishna is the part. What is it? Param Satyam, Satyam Param.
Satyam Param Dhimahi.
Satyam
Param.
Satyam Param. It's just like, and that's the universal remedy. Satyam, isn't it? Is that what you're? Let me get my words mixed up. Very good. Let's go on now with Kate reading. How about it, Kate? Will you read for us?
Yes, Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:2-27. The body, the total body, and the individual body are of the same composition, may figuratively be called the original tree. From this tree, which fully depends on the ground of material nature, come two kinds of fruit: the enjoyment of happiness and the suffering of distress. The cause of the tree, forming its three roots, is association with the three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. The fruits of bodily happiness have four tastes: religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, which are experienced through five senses for acquiring knowledge in the midst of six circumstances: lamentation, illusion, old age, death, hunger, and thirst. The 7 layers of bark covering the tree are skin, blood, muscle, fat, marrow, and semen. And the 8 branches of the tree are the 5 gross and 3 subtle elements: earth, water, fire, air, mind, intelligence, and false ego. The tree of the body has 9 hollows: the eyes, the ears, the nostrils, the mouth, the rectum, and the genitals, and 10 leaves, 10 airs passing through the body. In this tree of the body, there are 2 birds. One is individual soul, and the other is super soul.
Okay, why don't you continue with the purport?
Purport. The material world is composed of 5 principal elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether, all of which are emanations from Krishna. Although materialistic scientists may accept these 5 primary elements as the cause of the material manifestation, these elements in their gross and subtle states are produced by Krishna, whose marginal potency also produces the living entities working within this material world. The 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita clearly states that the entire cosmic manifestation is a combination of 2 of Krishna's energies: the superior energy and the inferior energy. The living entities are the superior energy, and the inanimate material elements are his inferior energy. In the dormant stage, everything rests in Krishna. Besides the inferior nature, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is superior energy of mind, which consists of all the living energy entities who are struggling with material nature and are sustaining the universe. Although the material elements emanate from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, they are separated elements and are sustained by the living elements.
Okay, that's a little scientific. What kind of realization do you get from the purport and the text?
Well, it reminds me of our conversation, when we were talking about Krishna as the absolute. All of these elements, even the inanimate, rest within Krishna.
Yeah. And what does that remind you of? The beginning of creation and the end of creation, right? Everything rests in Krishna. Krishna withdraws it and brings it in. I'm going to ask Premanand to also comment on this one. But continue, Kate. What else do you got?
I think let's hear what Premananda ji has to say.
Premananda, my darling, you please help us out here.
Well,
thank you, Kate. That was true. That was true. Go
on. What I take away from this verse is that Krishna is the root of everything, right? That's why this analogy of a tree is given. That he is what is that thing mentioned in the verse? What is the total tree or something is there, right? Or the original tree, that the original tree in the first line, right? So, so the analogy is given of a tree where Krishna is the root of everything and everything else kind of stems or branches out from that tree. It's very similar to that Banyanti analogy in Bhagavad Gita, right? Where whatever we have in the material world is a perverted reflection of that original tree. So, and because we miss the real tree, we are entangled here. But one, through the vision of knowledge, can see the real root, real tree, then he is on the path of liberation. And that's what the demigods are praising, that okay, you are the original tree, and everything else is sustained on that original body, which is you.
It's amazing how these so many analogies are given in the Vedic scriptures. What is another one? A very important tree. Actually, it's kind of like a vine that is always used specifically by Rupa Goswami in Madhya Lila 20, I think, or 19. What is it? Okay. Yes. That's the tree. That's the tree that we want to get entangled in, right? All the fruits are described in different ways, and how it's watered by Shravanam Kirtanam. Good.
Yeah, and there is another example in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita where Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains the different branches of Lord Chaitanya's tree.
Right.
This branch, and Srila Prabhupada, I think, said that ISKCON is also one of the branches of that tree.
Very good.
So
Very
yes,
good.
we're all connected. That means we are all connected, you know.
Yes, that means we're all connected in the same thing. We're really actually, if Krishna is, of course, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God, he's the father of everyone. We are all of us have a very intimate relationship with each other on the spiritual platform. Now, wouldn't that be wonderful to just walk down the street and realize you have a relationship with every soul, and there was no false ego, and we could just all freely love each other without all this. That's where we want to be, in that place where that's happening. We're going to try and make it happen here, but I don't know about that. But we'll keep trying. At least we have it with each other, so that's good. All right.
Another point with this particular verse is that it reveals how knowledgeable the demigods are. They're universal managers on all the different planets, all the different types of living entities, and their forms are being controlled by these controllers, by these Ishvaras, by these devatas, but yet they're also recognizing their subordinate position. Sometimes a person gets a position wherever it might be, they start to get proud and think that they're more powerful than they really are. But here we see, because they're in a difficult situation and have had to pray to the Lord for his help, now once again they're acknowledging all these things in their different categories. Let's go on to the next one, Sama, which describes the two birds in the tree.
Good. Madhurya, you want to read for us? Madhurya Leela?
Sorry, I'm not home, so I'm just listening. Thanks.
Okay, sweetie. Okay, Ian, why don't you take over? Thank you, Madhurya.
Okay, Hare Krishna, everybody. So, purport continued, as indicated by the word Dvi Kagaha, living elements within the body resemble two birds in a tree. Ka means sky, and Ga means one who flies. Thus, the word Dvi Kagaha refers to birds. In the tree of the body, there are two birds, or two living elements, and they're always different. In Bhagavad Gita 13:3, the Lord says, Yam Chapi Mam Vidi Sava Tetri Shu Bharata. O sign of Bharata, you should understand that I'm also known in all bodies. The Kshetragya, the owner of the body, is also called a Kaga, a living entity. Within the body, there are two such Kshetragyas. The individual soul and the super soul. The individual soul is the owner of his individual body, but the super soul is present within the bodies of all living entities. Such a thorough analysis and understanding of the bodily structure cannot be obtained anywhere but in the Vedic literature. When two birds enter a tree, one may foolishly think that the birds become one or merge with the tree, but actually they do not. Rather, each bird keeps its individual identity. Similarly, the individual soul and the super soul do not become one, nor do they merge with matter. The living entity lives close to matter, but this does not mean that it merges or mixes with it. Asanga hi ayam purushaha. Although material scientists mistakenly see the organic and inorganic, or animate and inanimate, to be mixed.
Okay, very good. That's an important point. Read that last part again. The living entity, starting from the living, there you go. Read that again slowly. This is important.
Yeah, so the living entity lives close to matter, but this does not mean that it merges or mixes with it as Sango Ayam Purusha. Although material scientists mistakenly see the organic and inorganic, or animate and inanimate to be mixed.
Right. What do you think about that?
So the aspect of it in the birds, two birds in a tree, and okay, so the birds are in the tree, but even if, for example, there are some birds will take maybe the color of the tree, but then that it does not mean that the bird loses its identity.
You have a good point in this. Go on.
Yes, and also the aspect of merging, there's also the situation where, okay, for example, if one is driving on the road and you merge into traffic, it does not mean that you have lost your identity. You're with the other people traveling. But what about, for example, a bubble? Then it goes into water. It may not lose its identity, but you cannot see the difference once it merges with the water. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No, you are. You're explaining.
So that's what the merging. Yeah.
Okay, so what else did that purport have to say? You want to put it back, Betsy? That was touched on a few really important points.
Let me see if something else.
The owner of the body. And
okay.
Go on.
In other words, for example, so the aspect of whether one is the body or the owner of the body. So within the body are two such. Okay, so there's the individual soul and the super soul. So the individual soul is the owner of his individual body. Okay, so I am present in this body alone. I'm present only here, but the super soul is present in all the different bodies.
Right.
So as localized, the super soul is pervasive. So
wow.
That's the difference. Yeah.
That's another way we're all connected, right?
Yes.
We're speaking about that.
And that's also the difference between the individual living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We're localized in one body. He's everywhere. That there is a difference. He's pointing out there are two different. That's also another feature which discounts merging. You can't merge to become one.
Right. It's like sand on the beach, isn't it? It looks like it's all sand, but if you take it apart, you see the little pieces.
That's also the example that's given by the Acharyas. And the example Ian gave, he said when you put a bubble into the water and then it pops, there's no longer any identifiable difference between it, because oftentimes that example is given that a drop's taken from the ocean and it's the same as the ocean, but when you put it back in the ocean, it loses its identity because you can't see it anymore. But the Acharyas point out that if you had the vision of the molecular makeup of that particular drop, you'd see that all the molecules are still individuals. It's not
right.
Right. The bubble itself might not be there, just like when we leave the body, but the molecules are still there.
Yeah. Kate, did you want to say something?
I was just gonna say, elaborate a little bit, or this just makes me think that this is very contemporary and pertinent in a society where the most, important value almost is individuality. Our philosophy allows people to retain their individuality and consciously, through free will thinking, choose to serve Krishna how they, how is best suited for them. And then also it reminds me that last part of the purport about what Tisha said with the pigs heart. You know, we think that we confuse ourselves with material or with the inanimate.
Good.
Can't really. There is
The difference.
a difference. Yes.
Yeah. Difference. Good. And materialists, so-called scientists, they can't understand that there is a difference between matter and spirit. There, you know, it's all matter.
Okay, let's go on to the last verse, please.
Yeah, let's go to the last. How about Shankovinda? Wait a minute, is that? And then we have something. Sham, you want to read?
Yeah.
It's not the last slide, it's the last verse.
Okay, 10:28. Am I reading just this slide?
Yeah, maybe the next one. Tisha will read after you.
Oh, okay, thank you. The efficient cause of this material world, manifested with its many varieties as the original tree, is you, O Lord. You are also the maintainer of this material world, and after annihilation, you are the one in whom everything is conserved. Those who are covered by your external energy cannot see you behind this manifestation, but theirs is not the vision of learned devotees. Purport. Various demigods, beginning from Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and even Vishnu, are supposed to be the creator, maintainer, and annihilator of this material world, but actually they are not. The fact is that everything is the Supreme Personality of Godhead manifested in varieties of energy. Ekam eva dvitiyam Brahma. There is no second existence. Those who are truly vipaschit, learned, are those who have reached the platform of understanding and observing the Supreme Personality of Godhead in any condition of life.
Ready? Come on.
Oh, the teacher was going to read.
Teacher, you want to read? And then, because I think Bhakti is here too, she'll finish up. Thank you, Sean. Then we'll have a group discussion about this. Tisha?
Okay, purport continued. Learned devotees accept even conditions of distress as representing the presence of the Supreme Lord. When a devotee is in distress, he sees that the Lord has appeared as distress just to relieve or purify the devotee from the contamination of the material world. While one is within this material world, one is in various conditions, and therefore a devotee sees a condition of distress as but another feature of the Lord. Tate nukampam sushma shamana. Bhagavad Gita 10:14-8. A devotee therefore regards distress as a great favor of the Lord because he understands that he is being cleansed of contamination. Tesham aham samudarta murtyu samsara sagarat. Bhagavad Gita 12:7. The appearance of distress is a negative process intended to give the devotee relief from this material world, which is called murtyu samsara, or the constant repetition of birth and death. To save a surrendered soul from repeated birth and death, the Lord purifies him of contamination by offering him a little distress. This cannot be understood by a non-devotee, but a devotee can see this because he is vipaschit, or learned.
Very good. Okay, we're going to, Bhakti, you want to read the last slide? Thank
Actually,
you, Tisha.
before we go on some, I just
Oh.
want to know, does anybody know, can they connect the dots? Why with this purport would I put this picture here?
Oh,
Because Queen Kunti prayed for the distress to come again and again. So that
Yeah, very good.
Yes.
Excellent. Exactly. My
why?
understanding.
Then
Yeah.
we're going to talk about why would anyone want to do that? I pray for distress. Okay, last section of the purport. Bhakti, you want to read it? I think she's here. If not, you can go on. She was here.
Yeah, she's there. You
Bhakti.
gotta unmute Bhakti.
Unmute, Bhakti. You're still muted. You have to unmute.
She's pressing buttons and everything, but we're still not hearing her.
Oh, there you go. No, she's not.
No,
You're
she's
not
not.
unmuted. Can you unmute her, Betsy?
No, I don't think
I
so.
don't know how to do that.
I can unmute, but
Okay, you sound. Now start your reading. I hear you. Okay, start the purport.
simply for purport continued. Simply by surrendering oneself in the lotus feet of Krishna, one can completely discharge one's duties. There is no need to worship various deities or demigods. These various activities are observed by the mudas, who are bewildered by the three modes of material nature, Tribir, Gunamair, Bavair, Etit Sarvam, Aham Jagat. Such fools cannot understand that the real source of everything is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Monitam Nabijanatimam Ebyam Param Evyayam. Not being disturbed by the Lord's various features, one should concentrate upon the worship of the Supreme Lord. Mamekam, can you scroll up because my cell phone cuts the few? Okay. The various features. One should concentrate upon the worship. The Supreme Lord Mamekam Saranam Vraja should be the guide principle of one's life.
Good. And you want to read that? Always think of me. Always think of the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, and you will find no difficulties in executing the tasks allotted to you by Krishna. Wow. Okay. Thank you, Bhakti. Let's have a discussion about these last purport. Okay? So,
what my understanding is that by worshiping directly the Supreme Lord, we accomplish our tasks because we depend totally on Him, instead of respecting just the demigods who are only the suppliers, are only serving Krishna themselves.
Okay, that's one point. What about distress, Sham Govinda or Tisha, or anyone else at this point? What about the distress? Praying for distress. Why would someone do such a thing? What is why would you pray?
I don't pray.
Lay it on me. Lay it on me. Jaishi's got the answer.
Before we go to before we go on to why pray for distress, let's first of all cover what the purport described. That's the secondary because that was the picture. But the purport itself was talking about how one sees distress as a feature of the Lord. So let's talk about that first, Priya.
Okay, and also it's a great favor of the Lord. It said in the purport, favor of the Lord. Okay, so can someone say? Oh, Tisha, wait a minute, Bhakti. Tisha's going to say first, and then you. Oh, and then we got a lot of hands. Let's take a lineup. Tisha.
I just want to share with you my experience this week because I'm listening to the Mahabharata, and I got to the part where Abhimanyu gets killed, Arjuna's son, and Arjuna knows that he's with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that everything is happening, supposed to, but still in the book, Krishna said, Arjuna's like, why didn't you stop this? Why didn't you save my son? And he kind of has a moment with Krishna of maybe of doubt, that why didn't you do something? You're the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You let my son die. And it helped me see that even things you can't imagine, why is this happening to me? It's actually for the benefit. It's the distress that Krishna's provided so that you can go back to Godhead. So if Arjuna can do such terrible atrocities, then surely I can get through the day.
Right. Yeah. Okay. What is Ian? Ian, did you want to speak?
Hare Krishna, are you hearing?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the question will be asked, why would one want to have distress? Because in the material world, we want everything to be what we call hunky-dory, or quite nice every time. So when distress comes, we all, get all crazy and, all stressed out because of distress. But Queen Conti says, let the distress, let it flow, let it, I don't quite remember the words, but in essence, she's saying, let distress come, let it come, because once distress comes, the only one person we have to rely on is the Supreme Lord. So let distress come, let distress come. Also, there's another angle too that one says, when devotee get what they call so-called distress, you will say, okay, well, maybe, I think if the good times you say you're getting, I think more, or when distress can you say get less. I don't remember how it goes, but once distress comes to a devotee, he sees it as the blessing of the Lord. So ordinarily you will see distress as something bad, but as King Conti said, let it come.
What does the stress actually do? Why is the stress me? Why are we getting purified? Purified of what? What are we getting purified from with that distress? And then Bhakti and Jayashree. But that's a good question. Why? What is our purification from that distress, Chaita? What is
It's
that?
attachments, material attachments.
Okay, material attachments. Why can't we have attachments in the material world? Why not? I mean, why?
Oh, we can use whatever resources we've been given in service of Krishna, but we hold on to them as the end all and be all. We're going for around.
Why do we hold on? Why do we hold on to the attachments? Why do we hold on to anything in this material world? Who do we think we are? Who do we think we are?
We think we're Krishna.
We think with these bodies is who we think we are. We think that this is me. This is my relationship. These are my things. This is, what are we getting purified with this distress? How are we getting purified? We're getting purified finally with so much distress. We're feeling, okay, I'm not this body. We've heard it a million times. Let me try that mentality. If I realize I'm not this body, that means all these things that are happening have nothing to do with me. It's a mentality to understand who we are. That's what the purification is. That we're getting free from the bodily concept of life. Make sense?
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. And Jayashree? And then Bhakti?
I don't know if I have anything to add to that. I was going to say, calamities like with Queen Kunti, they happen, and Krishna's just there's always a test, and we're supposed to choose Krishna all the time. So we always have that choice. And hopefully we choose Krishna all the time. So it'll help us remember more, remember Krishna, become detached from the body, the enjoyment that we think we're getting from the body, and the things that we think are ours.
Based on the body. Based on the body.
I was reading something recently, or here in a class, it was, how if you're too attached to your house and you'll come back as a mouse in the house, or a roach in the house, or this, and I'm like, God, don't be attached to anything, because
nothing in this world. It's all temporary.
Nothing's temporary.
God, and then Maya's good. Do not forget, Maya is good. She will lure you. Each one. Yeah. She knows something about each one of us. Okay, look at this. Why don't you read this?
I'm supposed to say something?
Yes. Please let Bhakti speak, and then maybe you can read this too. Bhakti?
Because Queen Kunti was a pure devotee, and she was totally dependent on Krishna. It was his aunt. But ourselves, I don't think so. We have to pray, Krishna give you more and more distress, because we cannot overcome the difficulties. Like, we have to watch out what we pray for. I can pray for some difficulties according to how much I can handle it.
Let us read her prayer so we better understand how it fits in. Sama, have somebody read this.
Okay, Tisha?
Translation: I wish that all those calamities would happen again and again so that we could see you again and again. For seeing you means that we will no longer see repeated births and deaths. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Generally, the distressed, the needy, the intelligent, and the inquisitive who have performed some pious activities worship or begin to worship the Lord. Others who are thriving on misdeeds only, regardless of status, cannot approach the Supreme due to being misled by the illusory energy. Therefore, for a pious person, if there is some calamity, there is no other alternative than to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Constantly remembering the lotus feet of the Lord means preparing for liberation from birth and death. Therefore, even though there are so-called calamities, they are welcome because they give us the opportunity to remember the Lord, which means liberation. One who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, which are accepted as the most suitable boat for crossing the ocean of nescience, can achieve liberation as easily as one leaps over the holes made by the hoofs of a calf. Such persons are meant to reside in the abode of the Lord, and they have nothing to do with the place where there is danger in every step.
Okay. Bhakti, you want to continue reading? You have to unmute, sweetie.
Oh, yes, sorry. This material world is certified by the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita as a dangerous place full of calamities. Less intelligent persons perhaps plans to adjust to those calamities without knowing that the nature of this place it is itself full of calamities. They have no information of the abode of the Lord, which is full of bliss and without trace of calamity. The duty of the sane person, therefore, is to be undisturbed by worldly calamities, which are sure to happen in all circumstances. Suffering, all sorts of unavoidable misfortunes. One should make progress in spiritual realization because that is the mission of human life. The spirit soul is transcendental to all material calamities. Therefore, the so-called calamities are called false. A man may see a tiger swallowing him in a dream, but he may cry for these calamities. Actually, there is no tiger and there is no suffering. It is simply a cause of dreams, a case of dreams. In the same way, all calamities of life are said to be dreams. If someone is lucky enough to get in contact with the Lord by devotional service, can you scroll up, please? Scroll because my phone. Scroll the text.
No, raise that one a little bit. Okay.
Okay, where we are.
Okay.
Here. In the same way, all calamities of life are said to be dreams. If someone is lucky enough to get in contact with the Lord by devotional service, it is all gain. Contact with the Lord by any one of the 9 devotional services is always a forward step up the path going back to Godhead. Going back to God.
Okay. Wow. So it's not that we pray for calamities, but we pray to be so attached to Krishna. Actually, could you put that back for 1 second, Pati? That was very descriptive of what this whole discussion has. Whoa. Okay, so the spiritual is transcendental to calamities. Therefore, so-called calamities are false. A man may see a tiger swallowing him in a dream, and he may cry for this calamity. Actually, there's no tiger and there's no suffering. It is simply a case of dreams. If we really understand this material world is simply a case of dreams, and it's really, even though, terrible things happen, people wind up in the hospital, tragic events, we have to continue cultivating this understanding that we're not the body. And then we'll be able to understand that this is a dream. Nothing that we're living through here is actual reality, although it feels like it. So that's why we chant and that's why we read, trying to become detached from this material world.
Another point here is that in the first part of the purport, Prabhupada explains that a pious person, when they experience difficulty, he says there's no other alternative than to take shelter of the Lord. And we know from Queen Kunti's personal experience throughout her life that whenever there was difficulty, especially with her sons, who were wonderful devotees and all eternal associates of the Lord, when there was difficulties, what happened? The Lord came to them. So she's saying, I wish the calamities keep coming, because now he was leaving for Dwarka. He was actually leaving Hastinapur after the whole battle. Everything was over. He was leaving. And she was feeling separation from him. So there's another import to these particular prayers by Kunti, where she's saying, I'd rather have the calamities than you leave.
Which would also mean that when we're suffering, we are directly facing Krishna and begging for mercy. So he wants us to be in that position. All right, so let's surrender before the suffering comes, but it doesn't happen that way.
Okay, in any case, these are the prayers by the demigods, and that was one of 3 sessions that we'll have covering their prayers.
And you might have something else that they'd like to say.
This material world is full of suffering. We don't have to invite the suffering, it comes. So
yeah, we don't have to pray for it. It's
we don't have
automatic.
to pray for the distress, but as Prabhupada very well explained, and you yourselves, is because that pushes us to depend on Krishna, to ask for his mercy.
That's good. Very good.
Obviously.
That's good for you. Jayashri, did you want to say something? Thank you, Bhakti.
Yeah, and then isn't it, I've heard that if you have these difficulties, whatever it is, the test or the purification or whatever, that if we just pray to Krishna, then he will help us to do the right thing and get through it. He give us the strength, the intelligence, all of that. So that's all.
And it's worth it, actually. It's worth it. But what it takes for the conditioned soul to come to that point. Oh boy. Okay. Everything.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna, Vanchakalpatobhyasta, Kripa Sindhubhyavata.
Thank you for a very enlivening discussion. Hare
Yeah,
Krishna.
but good day, everybody. Hare Krishna.